response video to 3 or 4 videos, Buddha Gem, Matt, and the Modern Mystic. Back on Buddhism again, sort of. I'll try to make this the last one where I have to reference that particular discipline, and we'll just stick maybe to the meditation element of it or whatever. I'll just concede. Okay, Buddhism was in the origin of the philosophy, whatever you want to call it, methodology, whatever, the method, is in the context of a world where little could be done. There was no power to control much in terms of even the structure of your civilization, let alone the structure of nature itself. Little understanding of the true context of this mechanical world we live in, evolution, all these dynamics. So we'll just make that concession, and let's just say that, like other religions, a great flaw might be is the fact that people don't allow it to evolve, that they don't let the philosophy progress into the context of a modern time where better answers to questions can be obtained. So I'll just leave my critique at that, and I'll move on to the concepts that I think are important, because depending on how you phrase these words, depending on how we define these words, I got nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with the statements themselves. Because I guess I could interpret Buddhism to be saying life sucks. Not that life is suffering, but that life has an element of futility. That, yes, you are going to be dissatisfied. That is the nature of life. Dissatisfaction, because you can only hold or grab satisfaction for a brief moment. Christmas only does happen for a few hours a year, okay? The charm wears off real fast. We can find it in our love life and a lot of things where we can put a lot of time, years, investment into what is a very brief moment of what we might call satisfaction, fulfillment, actualization, contentment, complacency. These are hard things to obtain. They only have a short lifespan, and most of life involves trying to obtain that state of mind. So that would be a fair, I think, that's a fair interpretation of my interpretation. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm stating that that's the truth. And I think Buddha was basically saying the same thing. It's just words have perverted it into something else. So the idea is to say, find some way to trip the natural system, to find some way to defeat it, to break it, so you're not stuck in that mediocrity. And the way to break it is to eradicate the desire from you, to rid yourself of the blight of the need that compels you. The only problem with that is that does nothing for the other component of dissatisfaction, which is deprivation of fundamental needs that you have to satisfy, that you don't really have a choice, because if you don't satisfy them, it's not a matter of you can choose to be hungry. You're really not going to eradicate that from yourself. I mean, you might be able to do it, maybe 20 years of meditation, and you can eliminate drives like hunger. I'm sure, if you degrade your fantasy psychology and destroy your perception of pleasure associated with things, maybe you can get rid of a sex drive, maybe you can get rid of a lot of the motivating things that exist inside your psychology. But who wants that? That would be the next question then. So what's the friggin' point? That's what I'm talking about by the zombie thing. The only thing that makes this life thing make any sense at all is the addiction. The fact that we do need, that we want the damn cheese, that we want to chase the cheese. It might be futile and stupid, and I would say it is futile and stupid. But that's another question. The real question is there any point in living if you're not going to bother doing that? Are we accomplishing anything beyond that? And that's where I'm criticizing the Buddhist philosophy, because it is basically saying life sucks, but we'll just lobotomize ourselves to figure out a way to tolerate it. But we won't ask ourselves the question, what the fuck are we doing that for? Because is there anything to be accomplished? They're basically conceding survival has a purpose. I was reading in one of Matt's wiki links, where they compared life to leaves on a tree, and the leaf falls off and a new leaf grows, and the leaf falls off and a new leaf grows. And you would think there would be a question as to, well, what's the fucking point? Is the tree doing anything? Is there any accomplishment in that? I mean, especially if Buddha is conceding that the leaf itself is living in mediocrity. Well, then it isn't a splendid accomplishment, is it? Mediocrity, die. Mediocrity, die. That's kind of stupid. And so I would argue that what can save this mess is that first we get rid of the excesses, the excessive negatives, and that we maximize the positives, and at least then it has some hope of having purpose. But if we're going to concede to mediocrity, if we're going to accept mediocrity, and that our escape from mediocrity is basically to kill ourselves while we're still living, I mean being a zombie, being dead, eradicated of our emotional life, our passion, then yeah, there's no point. But you can't have the passion without the futility. You can't have the passion without the want, without the sense of deprivation, without the suffering. So you really can't, there's no middle ground here. So nirvana is just a description of eradicating your need, but that's not satisfaction. That's not that's not true pleasure. That's artificial. It's fake. It's only dealing with half of the equation. So anyway, that's the end of that. I mean, I just argue that you don't need meditation to understand your human psychology. It's all. Look, go ahead. If you want to use meditation, go ahead. You want to say meditation is the way you get there, that's fine. But you don't have to. There's no fact that says everybody has to use meditation. You can't do it if you don't meditate. That's nonsense. You can introspect yourself without meditating. You can figure out some truths about your personality and your identity, and you can even modify your intelligence quite radically by just thinking, by just being conscious and using your brain and prioritizing as your brain does naturally thoughts and ideas. Application of logic will do that for you. You don't need to jump into some altered state to accomplish the task. Alright, so we'll get to Nick made 3 videos, and he brought up all kinds of subjects that I'd rather not get into in this video, but I guess I'm going to. But we're back to objective morality again. And he makes the emphatic statement, we don't know, we can't know, we'll never know what right and wrong is. I mean, it's just so bogus. It's such an idiotic thing to say. Of course we can know. He denies, he even admits that there are alternative perspectives, and yet he won't admit that any of them are objective. I mean, of course they can be objective. They can go beyond any self-interest of any relevant party, because the logic itself can do the thinking. You can have an equation, a mental principled equation, to make a judgment about how something is functioning. So if we go from the individual level, yes, then it's all about the individual. It's all about the selfish individual. But if you realize that all the individuals are equal, well, then you take a step higher, okay? And so now the equation becomes what's in the best interest of this collective of individuals, because it's no longer about any single individual and what it needs. It's about this collective, because the collective is obviously going to be more relevant and more important, because now we can appreciate that to make one individual happy, it would be foolish to sacrifice 10 other individuals. That would be idiotic. So then we can have a better understanding, and then it can be about not just the community of human beings, it can be the community of feeling organisms. We can expand the perspective, and then we can apply logic to the equation, and we can know the difference between right and wrong. It's within our grasp. It is not something impossible, and it is not something we will never know. Maybe you'll never know. Maybe you're too stupid to get past your own subjectivity to have an intellectual thought, okay, that isn't biased by your own stomach or your own wants or your own needs or your own desires or your own perception of beauty or your own preferences or your own prejudices. But I think most people have enough intelligence to realize they have addictions, they have dependencies in their life, and that they can think without allowing those dependencies and those prejudices to influence the thinking process. People can do that. And this whole argument that you know, it's all programming. I agree, it's all programming, but we still have to deal with the real fact that there are multiple programs in our brain. They are arguing for dominance. They are fighting for dominance, and it depends on which one of those obtains that dominance. All right, and what's going to decide that is the logical functionality of that brain, because it has any logic at all, and it realizes equality, a simple concept, the simple concept of equality. Then it will make that principle will dominate. It'll see that principle as a piece of gold, and it will put it on top, and it'll always be mindful of that reality. And it's only through the most despicable selfishness that somebody could tarnish that gold, or rust that gold, or throw that gold to the bottom of their understanding. Okay? Only a grotesque amount of selfishness could do that.